Well, it's my distinguished pleasure to welcome for this next plenary His Excellency. As you have the investment here, thank you very much for joining us. What I would like to do with you, if it's okay with you, is just to talk first about Saudi Arabia and the investment environment here in Saudi Arabia, and maybe look at it from a global perspective afterwards, before we maybe finish on ESG best practices. So it's a lot on our plate. Maybe to start on Saudi Arabia, there's been impressive changes over the last few years, and I'd like you to maybe tell us what are the changes, especially that you'd like to underline, that have led to improve the investment environment here in Saudi Arabia?
Well, thank you very much, Remi, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, masakum Allah bil khair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you all in this inaugural Future Minerals Forum. The kingdom's transformation is real. All of you see it, and it's changing by the day, physically, socially, and certainly economically. And the economic transformation that we're talking about, as outlined in Vision 2030, is underpinned by a number of factors, but perhaps the two prominent ones are diversification and private sector participation growing exponentially. In order to achieve that, both of those, we have to have best-in-class competitiveness with our ecosystem, with our regulation, with our financial system, with our partnership between public and private sector, with opening markets and opportunities, and developing the opportunities for the private sector. As has been said all day long, mining and monetizing our endowment of mineral resources is central to the diversification, not only as a sector of its own, but as an unlock for value chains, various value chains that the rest of the world is talking about recently, and we believe will grow in importance. So what have we done the last 5 years and a half since launching that comprehensive vision by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince? We've been laying the foundation to achieve all of that. And the first foundation, and the most important foundation, it has to be solid, is all about regulations. Judicial regulations, sector regulations, which are also a part of integrated strategies that have been developed for various economic sectors, including manufacturing, and of course mining and minerals, which this conference is focusing on. We identified early on something like 500 plus regulations that were investment enabler specific. I'm pleased to say today that 80% of them have already been enacted. So we've gone a long way of addressing the gaps that we have identified in our regulatory system, and we do acknowledge that our regulatory system was behind the times, but it will be best in class by the time we're said and done. We've enacted a number of just greenfield laws that have came into effect: bankruptcy law, PPP law, a number of other laws that are already in place. In my ministry, the Ministry of Investment, we're working diligently at drafting an investment law that's going to address the needs of both domestic and international investors. It is going to be a global best-in-class law. I am certain by the time it's enacted this year, hopefully sooner rather than later. Our judicial system is also undertaken extensive reform. We've formulated commercial courts. There are financial courts being studied to be launched, and these are going to be codified judicial rules that will guide judges in passing judgments and remove some of the uncertainty that has pre-existed before around our judicial system, which we've identified. We have arbitration centers that are being established to bring best-in-class global arbitration procedures, in addition to the special courts that are going to address the needs of the private sector. So it's a long story, but by the time you wrap it all together, I believe the kingdom will be, in terms of its regulatory system and judicial system, one of the best places to do business. We're already very good, by the way. International investors and domestic investors have been finding investing in the kingdom to be stable, predictable, and secure, but we're not happy with being very good. We want to be the best, and we believe our regulations and our reforms are taking us in that direction.
I mean, you do mention the key changes in regulation, the judiciary system, and others that are important. Maybe one that we can also mention is the key investment in infrastructure, which are so important for the mining sector. Could you maybe just brush upon this and give us a little perspective?
Well, this is one of our major strengths. I think if you go back to the 70s and 80s with the first oil boom, and when the kingdom had the surplus financial resources back then, we built some of the best industrial cities in the world. Jubail and Yamba at that time were clearly the best globally. Since then, we have grown that industrial infrastructure. A lot of it is actually around the mining industry. Mm-hmm. So Wad al-Shamal on the northern borders, Ras al-Khair on the eastern province are mining and metal specific infrastructure, the cities that brings not only land and utilities and ports, but all of the shared services, a single service provider regulator in the form of the Royal Commission for Jubail and Yamba, which is running those industrial estates. We're in the process of finishing Jazan, which is going to be, which already is a world-class city, 25 square kilometers, that is going to be housing a lot of mining assets, given the endowment in the southwest of the kingdom and also its proximity to Africa. The King Abdullah Economic City around Rabagh is 180 square kilometers, which we hope very soon will be a special economic zone on top of the great infrastructure it brings, and it will also help in developing the value chains and the logistics. Rabagh, where Petro Rabagh is and all of the utilities there, is also a destination. So, and I think probably the most bold venture in terms of industrial estate is what NEOM has announced. Yes. With Oxagon. And that's going to be, I think, setting the stage in terms of technology, digital, net zero, sustainability, and bringing the best and value chain development from mining all the way to advanced manufacturing. Of course, connectivity is key, especially when you're moving heavy materials like we do in mining. So we've built the North-South Railway, 1,400 kilometers from the northern borders all the way to Ras al-Khair, passing through the central region. That is going to be expanded, and it will be having a double line to allow us to improve, to increase the capacity and do more manufacturing in both Ras al-Khair and Wa'ad al-Shamal, and also access the resources along the way. Rail connectivity will increase dramatically in the kingdom. We're expecting, I think the number is about 14,000 kilometers of new rail that will crisscross the kingdom and add to the network we already have. In terms of our roads, the World Economic Forum Connectivity Index ranks Saudi Arabia as #1 globally in terms of road connectivity, 200,000 kilometers. So you can't find a spot in the kingdom that is not connected with high-quality asphalted road. So, and all of it is free, available, no tolls. So miners and midstreamers and downstreamers are able to move all of this. We have a very extensive logistic strategy that my colleague, the Minister of Transport and his team have launched that's very, very ambitious. All of this, of course, is the physical infrastructure. You have to also give the kingdom the due recognition for having one of the world's best digital infrastructure. We're number one in the Middle East in terms of 5G penetration, high-speed broadband, and connectivity. And we know, and we've heard throughout the day about advanced manufacturing and advanced mining and all of the technology. All of that needs connectivity and 5G, and that is available and ramping up very rapidly. Fiber is also available all around the kingdom. So I think when you look at infrastructure in the kingdom, I am certain that we're one of the best places there is.
Maybe moving on more the global level of analysis. I mean, we talked on the previous session with Eric Cantor about the disruption in global supply chains, the importance to secure supplies to critical minerals. How much is that actually an opportunity for Saudi Arabia by building its mining sector to become really a new hub for critical minerals?
Well, I think that's a very good question, because there are global trends that are intersecting. One of them, of course, is long supply chains, and the fact that many companies are moving to regionalization. We're in a region that has underinvested in providing its own supply chain, and also being a platform for providing the rest of the world with critical minerals and materials that the world needs. So that's one, and we believe the kingdom is perfectly positioned from a geography standpoint to address the needs of the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, and beyond. The other one, of course, is sustainability and ESG. The kingdom has access to the lowest carbon content energy, almost in an unlimited And the third trend that I think the world has found, COVID and pre-COVID, is the need for governance and governments that investors can trust. And the kingdom over, since its existence, have always been the most trustworthy for investors. I happen to have worked in the oil industry, which is, of course, subject to a lot of geopolitical risks. And I can tell you that whether it's Aramco or Chevron or the oil field services or the petrochemical companies, the region has gone through challenges and turmoil. And we just saw that during the COVID crisis, where the competence, trustworthiness of the Saudi government has come through clearly for all of the investors that talk to us and have felt extremely, extremely secure. So you bring all of these together, all of these global question marks and risk factors, and we believe that the kingdom addresses them in an optimum way.
No, very good. And obviously, geology doesn't know the natural borders and so on. So still looking at international level, how, when you're seeing the influence that Saudi Arabia could actually have on neighboring countries or the eastern part of Africa through the Nubian Shield, how do you think that the best practices that are being developed here in Saudi Arabia could be a chance for the influence that you would have on that region, or could be actually replicated in their new other geographies neighboring?
In terms of practices of just how we invest and how we run our operations, I think the kingdom has set the benchmarks, especially in oil and gas over the last 7-8 decades. Aramco's preeminence in terms of not just how much, but how it does its business is clear to all. I am proud that Ma'aden, SABIC before, and Ma'aden in their respective fields have emulated very well what Aramco has done in oil and gas, and both of them are prominent, best-in-class benchmarks for their respective industries. So that's just at the corporate operational excellence level. The kingdom, with our Vision 2030, led by our visionary, dynamic leader, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, is also transforming very much the region and beyond. It is no secret that all societies and all governments are looking not only at the boldness of the vision, but the implementation of the vision as a model to emulate. We also recognize that the world is getting smaller, and no one country, no matter how big, can go it alone. And we cannot be secure unless the rest of the region is prospering and safe. And His Royal Highness in this room a couple of years ago has said that his vision is to see the Middle East as the next Europe. And that's achieved not only by sharing the best practices we have and helping them also envision their own relevant transformation, but also by helping to integrate markets, helping to allow them to address the Saudi market, which is the largest, but also for us. Because I think global investors, and we have many of them here, they want to see larger markets. They want political stability, which we have. They want resources, which we heard all day about the prospectivity and the endowment we have in the Arabian Shield. But they also want to see larger markets, smelters and refineries, downstream. They need to be closer to market. And we have a huge market, Middle East, North Africa, and the rest of Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is not only large, but it's growing very fast. And with the peace and prosperity that everybody is working on, we're sure that the next wave of growth, economic prosperity, is going to be around the kingdom, centered and anchored by the kingdom, led by the kingdom. And the mining sector, given the demand that we know is going to happen globally for sustainable metal and mineral value chains, the kingdom can lead that sector by bringing the markets as well as the resources available within this broader region.
In terms also, I mean, you mentioned leading by example and best practices. I mean, you and I had several conversations on the importance of ESG. I know Mark Bristow in a former panel mentioned the importance of the S, specifically the social, into the ESG. You mentioned that, no project that actually do not, include the best standards in ESG would be successful here. I just wanted to get your perception more again on what is important in the ESG practices here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and how do you see this moving forward?
Well, the ESG is as a term is relatively new. At least it became prominent the last few years. But without sounding like I'm bragging too much, it's really embedded in our DNA. If you look at our practices going back a few decades ago, even the original concession that was signed by the late King Abdulaziz with SoCal of California, ESG spirit is all over it in terms of developing the country, developing the people, taking care of the environment and having the right governance and responsibility assigned between the government and the private operators. You go back to the 70s, and the kingdom financed, the government financed the elimination of gas flaring back in the 70s. By the 1980, the kingdom was producing 11 million barrels a day, and not a single molecule was being flared. Okay, that's more than 40 years ago. If you look at how companies like Ma'aden and Saudi Aramco and SABIC, how they work within the communities, build schools, build vocational training center, financed by the companies and the government. Perfect public-private partnerships to bring education, to bring skill development, even to help households. Aramco worked with the communities to fight malaria and other tropical diseases back in the 50s and 60s as a practice, and that has spread. So, and the other thing is what the government is doing and how we regulate the private sector. Today, Tadawul and our CMA, by all standards, and you can look it up there, it's one of the top 5 in every standards of how we govern, whether it's disclosures or other aspects of corporate governance, the kingdom is ranked one of the top. So on all fronts, I think the kingdom stands very, very high. Of course, what has been announced by the Crown Prince, Green Saudi, Green Middle East, Net Zero. Today we heard Ma'aden being announced by His Excellency, the chairman of Ma'aden. We're also, I believe, setting the global benchmark in terms of energy sustainability and environmental stewardship.
Very good. I mean, it's very nice to hear you say this, and I'm looking forward for those ESG standards to be reinforced again. I could continue for several minutes more, but we're actually running out of time. But thank you again, Your Excellency, for coming and explaining this vision. And please join me in thanking His Excellency today.
Thank you.
Thank you. شكرا جزيلا.